farm,
you worked your butt off in the off season.
Correct.
Knocking on doors, and did you give out a bunch of apple pies?
Yeah, I'm notorious for giving out pies, but yeah, this time of year, I drive around in the springtime,
with pies.
Sorry,
I'm imagining an old couple sitting on rocking chairs on their front
There's
porch.
a boy walking up to the door with a pie, Carl.
The guy's like, Ethel, pie boy's back.
Yeah, that's me.
This guy won't give up.
As long as I shoot big deer, I don't care.
Yeah, no kidding. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast, powered by DeerCast. You can believe that this is episode number 364.
I can't believe it.
Next episode, people will be able to officially go back into our back catalog, listen to an episode every day for a full year.
Those poor sons of guns. Can you imagine?
Speaking of poor sons of guns,
you're Tim Chelsea
and you're Matt Drury.
We're co-hosts here. This here podcast.
We got bellies full of meat. We just finished a little grill out here.
That's what she said.
At the studio. Scotty brought in some back. Who all that venison come from?
That all was from Scott's deer from gun season.
Okay.
So that was... We smoked it on the Cabela's Pro Series. He had bacon wrap back straps. Him and Alan were in charge of this. And then we had a venison queso. And it was
nodding his head.
Yeah.
It was, the queso looked like a kid's pile of vomit from school. It didn't taste like that.
It didn't smell like that.
It was good.
It was delicious.
We got a couple guests in studio.
I was going to see how far we could go before someone's like, we're here.
Without acknowledging these two.
Who else is laughing?
I could have gone for the whole podcast and ignored these guys.
Well, guys, thanks for stopping by. We got Carson. We got Brant in from the Iowa studio.
We got Carson, Brant.
Sorry, Carson and Bryce in. Too many bees.
Not really, but okay. So it's been a long day. Long week.
Drunk.
It's Friday.
It's Friday. Yeah. So
some of the guys, the followers said they wanted to see us drunk more. So
that's right.
We're just, you're meat drunk.
Yeah. They also wanted to have our wives stop by the studio.
Also not a great idea.
Probably not going to happen. Yep. They are not impressed by us.
All right. So we had a couple days of production meetings here in the St. Louis studio. And so the Iowa crew came down, Bryce and Carson and Darren make up the Iowa studio. And so they came down for the meetings, and we figured while these guys were in, we should do a podcast about their fall season because they both killed great deer. And Carson had one of the coolest hunts of the whole year from the entire team. So we kind of wanted to dive into that.
It was epic.
Yeah, I'm not real interested.
Someone's bitter.
Someone's
listen. Really holding on to that 2023 you stink trophy.
I'm just saying. I mean, you've seen one deer, you've seen them all, right?
That was probably the interesting part about this hunt. You don't see what this deer did and how it reacted to the calling and just the whole storyline. You don't see that often. So of course, it got out of the gate strong and got a lot of views and people really loved it. So,
and the fact that it was like the type of hunting that you did to kill that deer, I know a lot of people are interested in hearing more about that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Private ground and literally a piece I hadn't stepped foot on besides putting cameras on. And we go in there the first time and happened to get lucky and pull that deer off the hillside.
Well, okay, so let's backtrack though. You said private ground, but it was a permission piece.
Permission farm.
You worked your butt off in the off season.
Correct.
Knocking on doors and sending out letters. And did you give out a bunch of apple pies?
Yeah.
Did you maintain your dignity in the process here?
I'm notorious for giving out pies, but yeah, this time of year,
I think you could learn something, Tim.
Yeah, I need help.
I drive around in the springtime,
with pies,
trying to get permission on farms to go and shed hunt. I love shed hunting and normally go and.
Sorry, I'm imagining an old couple sitting on rocking chairs on their front porch.
There's a boy walking up to the door with a pie, Carl.
The guy's like, Ethel, pie boy's back.
Yeah, that's me.
This guy won't give up.
As long as I shoot big deer, I don't care.
Yeah, no kidding.
But no, normally I drive around in the summertime and ask a bunch of permission, go door knocking, send out letters and everything in between, meeting people as much as I can just to try to get permission.
And what is your approach? And like from your dress,
because you got a kind of a creepy demeanor about you. So how do you get over that?
Look really scary. Mm-hmm.
You just got to be calm, relaxed, and go to the door like you're going to talk to them about anything else. You're not trying to give them a sales pitch.
Sir, would you like pie? Also, can I hunt a deer on your land with a bow, please?
Yeah, no.
Sweating profusely.
Also, did I say pie? Because I have a pie.
No, normally not. But
it's honestly astonishing how many doors you knock on just to get one yes.
Yeah.
What's the percentage you think there?
Oh,
What did you say?
it really comes down to a numbers game, and I would guess you're probably looking at one yes for every 20 doors. So, I mean, it comes down to like, if you got to be really willing to go and do it.
Who's good at math? What's that percentage?
Another cool thing with like DeerCast marking, like sometimes we'll just get on the laptop or the app on the phone, and we'll just get on and we're like, okay, that looks like a great piece, would hold great deer, and we'll start marking out a route. And that's kind of what you taught me this year too, marking out the places you want to go, keep those a certain color, start marking off the ones, create a route, and
Using waypoints, it's like I'll mark the farm that I want one color, find their address. All right, their residence is here, make it a different color, make a line, and I know the one color is the houses.
Oh, dang.
So it's like, all right, if I know my colors where they live, and I just make a route, and that way you can hit 40 doors in one day.
Alan, we just found a new DeerCast 365 piece here. Write it down.
This is why you were asking for that pie waypoint.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. But
Drop the pie right here.
no, it's honestly worked really good. That's something I did. I moved out here from Ohio, so that was one thing I did growing up. I knew a lot of people, but also the people that I didn't know, I'd go and knock on their door, and that's kind of how I grew up doing it, was trying to figure out ways to get the most yeses so I could get the most ground to hunt, which would normally give me the best opportunity to try to get one.
Like, what do you say? Like, do you start by asking, hey, is anyone hunting your ground, or can I hunt your ground?
I have it kind of laid out where introduce myself, tell them who I am, where I'm from, kind of where I live. Like a lot of the times it's close to where I live, and they can build a common ground with the person. And that way they know kind of who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of build a relationship right off the bat. And then from that, just kind of tell them what you're trying to do. And a lot of times it's, no, sorry, my uncle, cousin, whoever hunts it. So it's like, all right, that's fine. Then just walk away. But
throw the pie in their face,
egg their house.
sometimes it's a yes and it works out. A lot of times it's a no.
It's sales.
So.
That's exactly the same approach I would take if I were trying to, find a new sponsor. You got to find a common ground. You got to be,
Never
pretty
used pies.
No, I don't use pies. That's a good tip though. So it's in general, that's just a sales. You're using basic sales tools,
right? But
in a different medium, right? Trying to find hunting ground
for sure. And I would say for the people that haven't done it before, the more that you do it, the better you'll get at it. I mean, it's no different than anything else. The more you do something, the more consistent you do it, the better you'll get.
Yep.
Yeah, that too.
So this particular property where this deer was, did you know the deer was there, and that's what led you to try to get access?
I had no clue about that deer, honestly, until about 4 days before we killed him. I was actually on a different deer, and that's a completely different story, but didn't quite work out on that property. The landowner asked if I could get off of it, and that was fine. There was a giant deer there that we were in place to kill, and we're getting ready to go and kill him, and it just didn't quite work out. So I went to that farm, pulled my cameras, and then moved them. And then 3 days later, we killed that deer.
And before that, 3 days, like once we were off that farm, it was like you were back to square one there.
Yeah, I didn't have anything. I mean, a few deer that were nice, not anything that were big like the one I ended up killing, but a few, 130, 140 type deer that were nice deer. And I probably wouldn't have had a problem shooting. But that deer showed up, and it's like, holy cow,
so
man.
We're talking about a gross 170. The video was on the Dream Season Live series on our YouTube channel, DeerCast, MOTV. So if anybody's wanting to know, and we'll probably link it in the show notes so people can to go watch it. But it's pretty fun. It's a fun hunt.
Heck yeah.
The deer does whatever a guy dreams a deer does when you grunt at him.
So what was the time frame here? What's the time of the year?
It was October 28th, and it was the day after the front came in, and we had probably a 20 degree drop and winds out of the north. Up
barometric
to
pressure
was through the roof. DeerCast was pegged with green for like a week, and we're like, if there's a time to try to kill him, it's probably right now. So we ended up going in there, and couldn't have worked out any better. And honestly, there was a lot of luck involved. I think personally, like that normally does not happen for a deer to come running to the base of the tree at 8 yards and give you a shot. But deer gods were watching over, you know.
It was just cool too, like how we got in there and just how we went about it. Because if we wouldn't have looked at the maps ahead of time, we're so big on that. Before we go out, we're always looking at a map and seeing where they might be bedding. How can we get the closest, you know, with access without spooking deer along the way? And the way in was not easy. You know, we decided to take the saddles in because we knew that the stands were going to be a heavy option with hanging and hunting.
For sure.
Tim's ears just perked up. Saddle?
Yeah.
I thought only I talk saddle on this here podcast.
Or maybe now I'm no longer the saddle guy on the team.
Oh, I doubt it. You're entrenched.
Crap.
So tell us more about that, because obviously that is a way that a lot of people are hunting now. What did that allow you to be able to do? You talked about the weight of coming in and hanging a traditional lock on, but what else?
For sure. I mean, like you said, when we looked at the map and our access, we were going down a big hill, going to have to slip through a creek and come clear back up the creek. And we knew if we had hang-ons on our back, one, we'd be loud, and two, we'd be sweating like pigs trying to get in there and do it. But that's one thing that I picked up years back saddle hunting when I was on public ground down in Southeast Ohio. It's like, you might have to hike in 2 miles. And if you do that with a climber or a hang on your back, you might pass out in the woods and die, you know. It's like walking up hills and stuff. So that's one reason we grabbed the Hawk saddles and slid up in that tree. And the tree, actually, you couldn't have put a stand in that tree if you wanted to. It wide off in 2 different directions. And we both hung on the same branch, and it worked out really well.
Kind of romantic too.
Yeah, you know,
just
we were
swinging.
No, it was awesome, man. And
okay,
I don't think it would have happened without the Hawk saddles.
Okay, so that's the setup, getting in. So you're sitting in the saddle, and has a lot of time passed, or is it in the morning, in the afternoon, or what are we talking here?
It was the evening. We got in early on purpose because we had expected it to be pretty good that evening, just with the way DeerCast was looking and the pressure, and everything was perfect. So we knew that we needed to get in there. One thing I forgot to mention is I got pictures of those deer that morning before daylight, and I had a feeling that they had most likely bedded in there because this whole farm is just thick. And we ended up getting in there, and it was probably, I don't know, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock.
2 o'clock, pretty close to that scrape that we were trying to get closest to on the map. We're like, how can we get to that scrape? You know, it was right at that peak scraping time.
I think it was probably close to 150, 200 yards, which sounds like a long ways away. And we would have liked to get closer, but we didn't know where those deer were, and we didn't want to get too close and booger them out. So we stayed back a little ways. And when we came up the creek, and if you watch the episode, you'll see it, but we literally shoot right up the creek, and we're sitting over top of the creek. So there's nothing that can get behind us.
Nice. The wind's good.
Wind's at our face.
Perfect.
It felt bulletproof. And we had a feeling that they were going to come out into this green field that, I don't know if it was rye or winter wheat or what it was, but there was green growing in this field, and we had a feeling that they were going to come out there. And I think it was probably close to 1.5 hours or 2 hours before we seen our first deer. And it was just a couple does that were through a finger, and Bryce was trying to film them, and he was freehanding with the camera. So it was kind of hard, but we ended up seeing the other deer, which was a big 9-point, also a giant deer. And then the deer that I shot came out, and he was right behind the other buck. So they were venturing up the hill, and it's
how
like,
far are we talking?
Probably, I'd say 200, 250 yards.
So you spot them, and at that point, do you decide, okay, we need to call and get aggressive? And
yeah, at first, I wasn't quite sure what their intentions were. And when the does led the way and kind of the buck followed, and you seen that they were marching up the hill, it's like, well, if we don't do something, they're going to walk out of our lives forever. And just so happens I forgot my rattling antlers that day, or else I might have rattled, but had the grut tube in my backpack and pulled that out, and I'm trying to grunt at them, and Bryce is telling me if they can hear it or not, and I'm like blowing that thing as loud as I can, and they can't hear it because the wind's howled so
That's
hard.
what she said.
So
we
sorry,
went to
Tim.
the
Damn it! Just quit hitting the soundboard, Tim. So what call are you using? And you said, did you end up snort wheezing?
Yeah, I ended up snort wheezing, and the first buck heard the grunts. The second one didn't. So we had the HS buck bark, and I snort wheezed, and both of the deer heard that, but the one in the back engaged in it, looked at us.
Deer.
The big deer engaged in it, looked at it, and marched right down the hill towards us. And
How loud did you? That's always the part for me that I'm always a little trepidation on how loud to call. Obviously, it's dependent how far they are and all that. But I'd say, if Scott were here on the podcast, he would probably say, like, I always usually start a little low and try to work my way a little more aggressive, because he's like, oh, he didn't hear you. He didn't hear you. So in the same scenario, you're talking like, this is where a camera guy is helpful, because a lot of times I'll face away a little bit and try to direct it behind me.
That's what I started with, because naturally in your head, even with a 25 mile an hour wind in your face, naturally your first instinct is to blow it behind you so that you're going to pull them further. But with as hard as that wind was blowing, it's like I was blowing that grunt call so hard it was breaking the reed over, and there wasn't even much noise coming out of it. So they weren't hearing it. And I think that snort wheeze just had enough volume to carry the sound that much further. And that's
so you're really,
you
I mean, loud,
as loud as I could. Yeah. 100%.
Couple, like, what's the cadence there? A couple times?
Just once.
Just once.
It was just as one single
And
time.
I'd say a few grunts before and maybe even one after.
Because
if it's
it looked
real
like
quiet.
It pissed him off.
Yeah.
It looked like
hollering,
angered him.
hey.
Yeah.
It's some reason that doesn't work.
Right.
But I think another tip too, like when you're grunting and snort wheezing, is just really watching the demeanor of the deer. You'll see an ear twitch. They might not even look your way, but sometimes you'll see that ear twitch.
He engages, he marches straight over, almost like trot almost, right?
Yeah. I mean, he basically ran into us. When he came, I had the grunt call in my hand, my gloves on. I don't like shooting with my gloves on. So by the time I seen him turn and start coming towards us, I peeled my gloves off, threw my grunt in my jacket as fast as I could. And by the time I looked up, he was 20 yards right here. It's like, holy crap.
So it was all instinct at that point.
Yeah.
Right?
There was no
ranging, no
it was
nothing.
just reaction. And I knew the base of the tree was within 10 to 15 yards,
Yeah.
So he came right to that and literally ripped a scrape right at the bottom on the branch that was right underneath our feet. I feel like that doesn't happen very often to a lot of people, and there's a lot of luck involved, but honestly, sometimes I'd rather be lucky than good. So.
Mark and Terry have said it a long time, man. No,
I've heard that before. I'm not that good.
So that hunt reminded me of the old VHS days of Mark and Terry's hunts, like the timber hunts, or I know the field and all that was involved, but just the excitement of it. That's a rut hunt. That's a fun rut hunt.
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
that's exactly
you don't get them enough.
That's exactly what happened to my deer this year that I tried to kill. I was like, oh, this is happening like Carson's. Like, I grunted, he came running in almost to the base of the tree, and I didn't end up killing him.
Yeah, and it happens like that. I mean, that deer that I called in could have very well got to the base of the tree, went to look, ripped the scrape, and looked right up at us, and boom, gone that quick. Anything's possible when you go out there, especially that time of year. It's like, God knows what you're seeing.
That's why I think, not that you're a casual hunter, but that's why casual hunters love the rut so much, because it can even the playing field for a lot of people. But that's also why those big deer hunters, they typically hate the rut, because that's when the deer they may have had patterned will go venture out.
7-year-old Susie Clark kills her first buck.
But it does even the playing field. It's interesting.
Certainly.
So.
Well, I don't like you, Carson.
I'm sorry.
So, I mean, you shoot the deer and then the wobbles.
Oh yeah. I absolutely lost my mind in the tree, and me and Bryce were both freaking out.
It
just happened so fast. We were just like, did we get him? And we were pretty sure we saw him fall.
Right.
Did this just happen to us?
Really?
We thought we seen him crash in the woods, and we had to go back and watch the footage like twice. And then even then I was like, I'm pretty sure he's dead, but I don't know. And I don't want to go over there and spook him and watch him run away,
Yeah.
So we eased over there, got down, eased over there real slow. And he had to keep prying me to keep walking, because I was like, should we back out? I don't know. Because the blood, where I hit him, there just wasn't a lot of blood that had came out of him, because the shot was so high, because he was right under us. But he kept prying me, and we walked right up on top of him, and it was like, surreal. Just surreal.
Jeez.
It was nuts.
So fun.
How big of a piece of ground was that you were on?
I want to say it was 180 acres,
Oh,
something
wow.
like that.
Decent size.
Decent chunk.
Are you going to be able to go back this year?
Yeah, I believe so. Early season.
Wow.
He has a guy that comes in, and
It was in Kansas.
yeah. But no, I should be able to get back in there early season this next year. So
That's great.
there was a lot of great deer I
Did you
ran.
give that lady 2 pies?
Yeah, a couple of pies. Yeah, but it was good. It was good, and I'm really looking forward to hunting there again.
Sure.
Absolutely.
It's an awesome
Heck yeah.
farm. But yeah, the permission game can be a pain in the butt, but it can also be really rewarding in that instance.
I'm curious from Bryce's perspective as a camera guy, like all that's unfolding very quickly.
Yeah.
Like, what are your priorities during that scenario?
Well, like we said, it just happens so fast. You know, it was in my mind. I was just like, "Don't mess this up! Don't mess this up!" Because I mean, it was just.
Are we recording?
I was, and two, I like to take my gloves off more, but it was pretty cold that afternoon. So I mean, I was trying in the saddles. This is where I was actually the first time I've ever been in the saddle. We've tested them and stuff at the office to make sure I knew what I was doing, being safe, but. That was actually my first time up in a tree with a saddle on. And honestly, that helped a ton because the way he came trucking down the hill, if I was in a stand, I was able to move around the tree, you know, as he was coming down. But pretty much only thing that I was able to do is just back the camera out. You know, he was just coming so close. And then I was like, is he going to come on the left side of the tree, the right side? And before the time you could even think, he was right there at that scrape. And I heard him go full draw, and I'm like, it's going to happen any second here. And I had him wait just a split second so I could nail the focus we were kind of shooting through the branch, but he had just a perfect little opening. You know, I figured maybe we were going to have to wait for him to walk, but he's like, I got a hole. And
it was about the size of a basketball. And thank God he stopped where he did, because if he'd have kept going, it would have been at least another 20 yards from the base of our tree past us before I'd had another shot 40 yards. Quartering away, probably. Yeah, it would have been a mess. But thankfully, he stopped where he did, and he did hold me off because I was going to shoot him as he was still running in. Because he was like right here. I'm like, I'm going to shoot. Like, I'm going to jump on him. He's like, wait.
Could have jumped on him as close as he was. What was it, like 8 yards or something? 8 steps
from the base of the tree that we were in to where the arrow impacted him. So,
did you hold lower on him because he was so close?
Not too much. I mean, I tried to bury it right in there as much as I could, but at the time I didn't really realize that his leg was still back, and it ended up being a tick higher than what I wanted. But with that angle, it's like you're going to get right in there with everything. And that's why when we had shot him, I was questionable about the shot because it felt like it was super high, but
at the angle,
it
was probably
perfect.
Yeah, it actually poked out right behind his offside shoulder, and it was right on. But
it's interesting how an instinct can kick in right or wrong, like in the right way or the wrong way, and what moves a person makes. Either you lose your shit and make a mistake, or you execute because you've done it so much and you kind of are cool, calm, and collected. So I've been on both ends of that. Unfortunately, this year on the wrong end of that with Titan in the early season, just didn't think it through. And, you know, I should have instinctually said, oh, that's 20 yards. But instead I ranged in the wrong spot. And I didn't think it, I should have just put that aside, and he's right here. It's a no brainer kind of thing.
There's always a million things running through your head at that moment.
Yeah. No doubt.
That sounds what you did. It was just like, it's a no brainer. This is it. Here, my instincts kick in.
Like you said. And I think a lot of that has to do with like the more situations you seem to put yourself in, the more you can kind of sit back, and if it don't work, be like, well, what did we screw up that time, you know? Yeah. And then kind of take that into consideration for every other time you go in. And I
should be really good by now, but still learning lessons.
Same here. Yep. School of Hard Knocks is still in session. Yeah. That's really the double-edged sword of bow hunting, is that you very rarely get a chance for redemption. Like, it's a one or done kind of thing.
Very true.
Absolutely.
And you try to learn from those situations. But there's just so much involved. So many things, more things can go wrong than typically go right.
100%.
Yeah, and then add a camera to the mix.
That throws a whole nother wrench in there.
Yeah. Well, you guys caught lightning in a bottle on this one.
Yeah.
It was we've been on a lot of hunts, and we filmed a lot of hunts, and it was like, man, sitting back and watching the full edit, it's like, wow, that was, that's a top 5 hunt that'll be tough to beat.
More than anything, I think going through it, all of us on this set have been through this, where it's like, man, you grind so much, and you see the success of others, and you guys are in camp with Mark, Wade, Perry. That's a tough camp to be in, because they're good. They're really efficient killers. And a lot of times across the 2 states they're jumping back and forth from. So I know the feeling personally, like when we succeed finally, it's just like, man, you're riding a different kind of high.
Yeah,
You
it's
really
awesome.
feel
100%.
you feel like, man, this is what these guys are gonna feel like
Oh, yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
No doubt.
Well, and it also shows like we have a variety of different styles of hunting within
Yeah.
the Drury Outdoors ecosystem.
Yeah.
Like it's not because sometimes we get the reputation it's box blinds and food plots and
Only.
that's it.
Yeah.
But our guys, I don't know of a style of hunting that our guys don't. Heck, Kelly Turner was in a fence row in like a lawn chair with a crossbow a few years ago and
Yeah.
killed something in Illinois. So
Wow.
there's
Yeah.
there's
He was in a house, like an old abandoned house this year, and killed one. Yeah.
That's cool.
creeping around.
So, but yeah, you're right. All kinds of different styles between, we got 50 people or whatever it is,
Yeah.
but it's
Was it 2 years ago, Perry killed that one out of that cattle shack.
yeah. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Fast hunt.
It's
So-
like whatever works, whatever's legal.
Absolutely.
Works. Man, well, congratulations.
I appreciate it.
You know
Appreciate
why
it.
we got these two here. Bryce had a really cool season too. He had a new piece of ground that you had just bought. Your wife just bought.
Yeah, just an acreage and
Small piece, right?
Yeah, less than 6 acres. So that's a cool thing with Iowa. We are fortunate. There are bigger deer. Oh yeah, Kansas. And
Northern Kansas.
as long as you're in the right area, decent trees around, I was expecting I'll have some deer during the rut in the backyard and kind of thing, and put some cameras out, and boy, it wasn't too long. And we did do a ton of work. We did food plots and stuff like that, more in hopes for this next year, just kind of establishing first year. They did okay, but didn't take long. And deer we called crook, really big, upper 70s buck, 80s, and biggest deer I've ever had to chase. And sure enough, it was just right in the backyard all year. And
He was all over you the
It was-
entire season.
it was chasing pretty hard, with our editing and, going out and filming and stuff, making time, because
It's hard to
you
get.
get these trail camera photos and you're like, oh man, he's getting close to daylight, or he did daylight. It's like
Yeah.
watching the wind and watching those days on DeerCast, like picking those grades. Like that's so nice for us to be like, all right, if we grind super hard Monday through Thursday, we could maybe get out Friday
Yeah.
evening and go
I know
hunt.
Ben struggles with the same thing because he'd be getting pictures this fall of deer, and it's like, hey, you want to get out there, but you guys have the reason why we have such great content put out on YouTube and DeerCast all the time is you guys are putting it out there. You're the ones doing the work, and when you're also hunters, that's tough through the fall.
Right, you
Like
gotta
you guys got to bust through the work to be able to
Yeah.
to go out and hunt.
Or if it's like the weather's absolutely perfect, Mark will hint like, I think maybe you boys should get out, but then we'll come back into the office
work
and
all
work
night.
all night.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's
So,
been times where we'll go out and then come back at well after dark and then edit for 3, 4, 5 hours.
Yeah. Well, so it didn't end up working out on the big deer, but you still had a really cool hunt happen, right?
Yeah.
The early November.
yeah. The crook, he ended up, like you were mentioning earlier, with big deer, sometimes you only get one shot at them, before they're gone. And we had an awesome encounter one morning, came into 30 yards, and I just had one to two twigs in my way. And there he was, broadside.
Yeah.
Carson's on the other side of the tree, like, let it loose, let's go. And unfortunately, it was just like a shot I wasn't comfortable with. And I'm like, deer that caliber, let's not risk it. So unfortunately, he walked out of my life, and we started switching gears. Had pictures of some other great bucks too. I was technically my number 2. We called him Shrek. I sent a photo of him the first time he was ripping a scrape, just this big bodied buck, 8-point, and sent it to Carson. He's like, he looks like Shrek. I'm like, perfect. we got a name for him. So yeah, it was, I think November 18th, I believe.
yeah.
We were hunting pretty
That's right.
hard. And that few stretch there, it was a real frosty morning.
Mhm.
Pressure was right. It was just one of those where Mark's like, if it's frosty, they might bed up for a little bit and then wait an hour or two. And they usually get up on their feet and start running around with that hard frost. So, and that was kind of exactly what happened. We did have some early movement with like a little buck coming in. So they started chasing pretty good. And we looked, it was actually across the road. I'm pretty sure I spotted him first. And it was just a quick second. And I was like, well, it was a big deer. Don't know who he was. About, 20 minutes later, you kept
Yeah.
hearing.
Grunting and all sorts of just buck roars, and it was a long ways away. So it's like, am I really hearing that? Am I not? You don't know, but
Like start to make stuff up in your head sometimes when you're sitting out there. You're like, was that really a grunt? Or So we ended up catching him. Carson saw some does on the other side of the fence, and sure enough, I wasn't really able to see, and the does started working towards us, and sure enough, he stood up on that little Shrek, and then my plan to kill Crook went right through the window. I'm like, as soon as I got eyes on him, I'm like, we're gonna shoot this deer if he comes in.
Limited time, and he's a great mature buck.
Absolutely.
I mean, those are, you can't look a gift horse in the mouth kind of thing. It's like, this deer is great, but this one's right here.
Yeah, 100%. So there was still a hot doe. I think there was four or five does, and one of them was still hot, and she ran perfectly. I did throw a few grunts at him. We threw a few grunts at him, and maybe even a snort wheeze. And like we were saying, watching their demeanor, you could tell I'm interested on this doe here. So we just were like, put the grunt call away, and sure enough, that doe it was perfect. She ran, and she was going to cross the road, and then she's like, I don't want to do that. And she just whipped right around, and she hopped the fence, and she came trucking through, just sprinting through. And then we seen him coming, and it was about as fast as we could grab the bow. You were kind of almost having a hard time staying on them as fast as they came in.
Yeah, I had the DSLR, and I was in manual, and had to switch it back to auto when they got in the open. I was like, oh boy, had to stand up, try to zoom the lens out because they were so close. But
that too is instinct, by the way. You don't want to go out there messing around with a DSLR if you halfway know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he came running right into the food plot we planted that summer. And he was at 23 yards, I believe, and stopped him the first time. He didn't hear it. And we did have a decoy out. And I think he came around the corner, and his doe was there. He saw that. It was a buck. And you could tell, like in the video, you can see him kind of puff up a little bit. Cool. And sure enough, the second Matt stopped him and was able to whip one right through him, and he ran across the creek, and we watched him fall over on the 6 acres too, which was like
nice
best case scenario. That's like my dream come true. I've always wanted to kill a deer on my own place and be able to have it actually fall. That's awesome. In sight. I think that's about as cool as it gets.
120 yards from the backsliding door.
It's crazy. Cool. Yeah, I never would have guessed in the backyard like that. It just seems so impossible. Yeah, it's just like, how is this happening? Like these deer, but like I said, you just sometimes if you're in the right area and do a little bit of work to your farm,
I think like Caleb Byers, when he was on the team, he had that little acreage and house, and they killed a couple really good deer on that small piece right there. Yeah. And so that same day, once you said the date, it reminded me of when you killed that. On the team, I think Taylor, Terry, you, myself,
and a lot of people killed on
there was like 5 or 6 kills that morning and that day or whatever. And it kicked off with Scott and I. Oh, Scott was that afternoon.
That's right.
Yeah. And it was a frosty morning. It was so bad. Like we were in a blind on my farm and we couldn't get the windows popped open. Oh, and they were frosted shut. They were froze shut. And we finally kind of pushed through and got it open. And that's when Scott's like, there's a buck out there. But we had a doe decoy out, and that's why I asked which decoy you had, but it's made him stick around long enough. Ours was on a hot doe as well. Really? He just shadowed her all the way in. And he stopped long enough to kind of look at our decoy while she kept walking off, and he had a decision to make. Yep. He chose wrong regardless because he got killed. But he chose right because he went with her. Yeah. The real deer, and it was just interesting to kind of watch how that took place in that moment. Him trying to go through the decision, like, well, should I go with that doe or should I stick with the one I'm on?
Absolutely.
But it was a frosty, beautiful, high pressure. Morning that day.
Paying attention to that DeerCast, man, it's crazy because it's funny. The same day Carson killed, we had 5 kills that same day.
Mark Taylor, Dustin Lynch, me.
Right.
I want to say there was a Missouri kill that day too. Maybe.
I believe so.
Cameron. Was it?
Yes, it was Cameron.
Yeah, that was the day. It was both those times. The camps.
Yeah, 10 kills in 2 days.
Yeah, and it was a rough season for weather overall. But when the weather got right, everything moved. It just opened everything up, and that's kind of the tail of the season, that felt like.
For sure.
But it was interesting how that works out. So, when I look at DeerCast, we've talked about it before. I don't know about you guys. Like, it's good to see the daily, like, hey, it's a great, but that's just a glance for me. I like the hourly. I dive into
for sure
the exact pressure and when it's peaking and when the clouds are coming in. To me, that's where the devil's in the details.
Absolutely.
So it takes a little bit. I think, maybe you're probably a seasoned hunter knows exactly what they're looking for, and it's convenient because it puts it all into one place. But for somebody learning how to hunt, that's where you really figure out what's affecting the deer movement.
Like why were they moving? You know? And then you see that pressure up in the 30s. You're like, okay, that makes more sense. You know,
so cloud cover, all that stuff.
Yeah, it's
moon phase.
All
cool.
Important.
Well, that's a pretty awesome. I mean, you guys, besides the grind of the edit season, the deer season, you both had phenomenal deer seasons.
Oh yeah,
amazing.
It was as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. It's nice to see you guys be successful because you work so hard on the Drury Outdoors stuff, and then to like go out and do it on your own. Cause I think the other misconception people have is like, oh, everyone just hunts at Mark and Terry's places and they're all just giving deer. Like,
6 acres, permission piece, that's the reality of it. So.
It's a grind. And I think everyone can relate. Everybody needs another hunting piece, or everyone thinks you got a lease now to hunt. But if you really just put in 1 week of just real hard work, get on the phone, the computer, DeerCast, map your routes, and go out there and execute, I think you knocked on 70 doors in 1 or 2 days there. And
that was just during
a couple yeses.
During the summer. And there was a couple farms that I ended up getting permission to hunt that I had asked to shed hunt, that later on I'd come back in the year, call it August or September, and introduce myself again. They already know my face. They've seen me before. And some of those people are the people that I had some of my best farms that I picked up, so it just kind of depends, I guess.
I'm kind of stuck right now because I've lost the piece down in Bourbon, the 380, and it's probably a better turkey farm than it was anything else. I'm really bummed about it this spring.
Yeah.
But there's a farm right across the county highway that I would love to get onto. But the house is like up a gravel drive and there's a gate and it says no trespassing. And so I was like,
go and get shot.
How do you get in there?
I don't think it ever hurts to ask. And I've always told myself the worst thing that they can say to you is no. And I mean, I guess they could pull a gun on you, but hopefully not.
And
I think in those scenarios, though, it's one thing to go to a house that's fairly gettable, easily to get to. But when it's like back along with a gate that says don't, those are the ones where those people mean business. Typically, you don't. That's where I wouldn't even.
And that's
think
where
twice
I
about
think
it.
we would send letters. And it's a lot of those old boys and gals. They're old school, know.
Yeah.
So something as simple as a handwritten letter goes a long ways, I think, for that older group.
Generation.
Yeah. Before we move on, one last thing I got to ask you: this past fall, the season before that, didn't you have a bit of an issue on a piece that you thought you had permission on? Or we should tell the negative side of this, but with leaving detail, like major details, out of it,
for sure. So I actually still hunt on this guy's properties. He's a great gentleman. And I asked him for 3 different parcels. He owned 3 different parcels. And I told him each one, told him the road that they were on, everything, made sure I was clear. He said, yeah, you're good to go. Awesome. Cool. So I go and put cameras out on all 3 of those farms. Well, oh man, it was probably 2 months that went by, and it was probably, I would guess, the first week in September, and ended up getting a picture of a deer that was probably 200, 220 inches.
Oh,
giant. And the biggest deer I've ever had a photo of ever. And I'm losing my mind. And come to find out, we're going in there switching some cameras around because season's approaching. It's the beginning of September, but October's rolling in. And we go to pull in there to switch some cameras out, and another car's there. And he was like, you got permission to be here? I was like, yeah. And I told him who the landowner was and everything. And he's like, I don't think you do. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, I have this leased and whatever. And we had called an altercation, but we went back and forth a few different times, and ended up the landowner didn't realize that he said that it was okay if I was on that parcel. Well, I didn't know that. So I went and apologized to the guy. I apologized to the guy who was leasing it. And I was like, if I had known it was leased, I wouldn't have stepped foot on it. Like I had no idea. I just thought it was private ground that no one was on. So I went in there and threw a camera on just like I did his other 2 parcels. So my bad, but I didn't think I was doing anything wrong.
Did anybody get a pie out of the deal?
No, well, the landowner has got many pies since then. I've been hunting his stuff for 2 years, and he's an awesome dude. And he understood that was just a misunderstanding between the 2 of us. But
did the other guy end up killing the deer?
No, he said deer's actually still alive, I guess. But
he's 400 inches.
He said that he was hunting him 2 years prior to that, and he said he had a couple close calls with him, never got him killed, and then. He said in the 2023 season that just ended, he said that deer was a lot smaller this year and ended up that guy actually ended up killing I think it was 200 plus inch deer. It was a giant this year. Same, I would guess the same piece. Yeah.
Dang.
But
it's a shame you weren't on that piece.
Yeah, I know. Which one of the other ones would have been leased? But
well, no, I vaguely remembered that. I didn't remember the details, but I figured we'd set the downside of.
So there's a lot of downsides for sure.
That guy was not happy when I pulled in there. Might have chucked some double A's at me, but
some energizers flying by.
I think
that was a lithium.
I got some D's in the truck.
D's nuts.
Forgive and forget, I guess, right?
Yeah, or not.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's
Tim, why are you so immature?
The question of the day. I'm trying.
The question of the day is brought to you by HHA Sports. Check out the brand new Tetra Rise X3, a groundbreaking 3-pin sight with a removable yardage wheel featuring the longest tape sets they've ever built. So we got a chance, Tim and I, to see this at ATA this year in St. Louis.
It's cool. It sounds like it's interesting to you because like you've used a single pin now for 3 years now. And
never had an issue until this year. It was my issue. I mean, I'm the dummy, but
still,
it made me think twice about it.
Yeah. So this is it's still a pretty clean sight picture. Yeah. You still have the yardage wheel. You can change the yardage on it.
Yeah.
But it's 3 pins.
It's more of what we talked about, that instinct in the moment of truth. I know, like a lot of people that go to single pin love them and never go back. I felt like I shot a little better once I went to a single pin because I think the multiple, I used to shoot like a 4-pin, focus better, and it almost gave me anxiety sometimes. I think, choosing the right yardage and all that. But Terry he stuck to I think they had another 3-pin. HHA does, and he stuck to that, and he just likes knowing, hey, I know this is 30, this is 40, this is 60 or whatever it is. So now that's kind of in the back of my head. I don't know what I'm going to do, but this is an interesting.
Yeah, it could be like a middle ground.
Yeah, exactly.
So does the bottom pin float on this new one, or is it all
Don't
three?
ask us technical details.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know if you were able to play with it at all.
Shot show. With it.
Yeah.
Tim. Move on.
It's your segment, brother.
Sorry. What kind of deer sign do you look at after season to start making plans for next season? Okay, so what about you guys? You got a permission piece, or you're on your 6 acres. What kind of deer sign are you looking for right now to start figuring out? All right, I need to move a set here. I need a plot there, or whatever the case. This is the access. Whatever.
To me, I think the most valuable thing you can do on any farm really is walk it this time of year when all that sign from last year's laid out. You have the bare bones, everything's there. You can see the trails, the rubs, the scrapes. Personally, I always look for those big hub scrapes that are a community scrape for all the deer that that every single deer is coming to. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, if you put a camera over that, say in September when they really start going, or early October, you're going to get a picture of every buck that's using that piece or part of the farm or whatever it might be. I think scrapes are huge when it comes to getting a pattern on a deer and where they're at and why. I think scrapes are super, super, super important.
So this time of year, leaves off, you're looking for trails, rubs, scrapes.
Yeah. Those transition areas where, that, or maybe a spot where you have 3 or 4 different trails cross. And if you have a tree that sets up, maybe good for a northwest wind or whatever it might be, trying to find those spots this time of year opposed to when you get into the summer and then everything's a green jungle and you can't see but 10 feet in front of you. Yeah. It's it's beneficial to do your scouting this time of year. And I've even prepped trees, go out there with a saw because it's going to look like what it looks like now in the fall once the leaves come off. So
How about you?
Very similar, do a lot of shed hunting here in the next month or two. So while I'm out there, I've always have DeerCast open. And like he was saying, I mark everything. So when we go back, like we were saying before a hunt, we can go back and say, oh, like you're saying with a scrape, October timeframe, where were those at? And I think this time of year too, especially if there's even a little bit of snow, you can find out exactly where those deer are bedding. And I think that's huge because in the summer, and you're not always going to have this opportunity this time of year with every farm, but if you can be able to find those bedding pockets and then how to access when you come in hunting the previous year.
Sure.
And I think that's pretty beneficial too. Access is king. So I'm marking trees, marking scrapes, pretty much all the sign that I see that's large and you can tell more than just one deer is using it. Fence crossings, stuff like that. You just don't see in the summertime. So
I think there's really something to be said too for the permission ground. For example, like if you hunt a farm for the first year, normally that year is tough, man, and you struggle. But normally the second and third year on a farm, you kind of have a better idea where those deer are going to be bedding or where they're going to be moving through and kind of why. And it also depends on the crop rotation too. Like I think depending on what crops you have is going to dictate where those deer are going to move in there.
Are the neighbors?
Yeah. Normally year to year is different, but I think all those things are important factors when it comes to this time of year, when you go in there and look at the sign and try to find sheds or whatever. I think there's a lot of different things you could be looking at to maximize your scouting this time of year.
But I wouldn't get too down either because there's some guys that just don't winter deer too. You know, so then they get out there.
There's nothing.
There's nothing here.
Anything.
So it's like, this time of year can be tough, but when you're in the areas where they are staying, it can be very vital.
Yeah. Or you get a snow and you can see some trails that maybe you wouldn't have been able to see otherwise.
Down,
Yep. Right on. Okay, the Wildlife Word is brought to you by Cold Steel, the strongest and sharpest knives for hunters, military, law enforcement, and EMS. Defend yourself against the coming zombie apocalypse with the 6-inch modified cleaver blade of the Cold Steel Mayhem.
Jeez, Tim.
Bad boy.
Dang.
Trying to compensate for something? It's not always about the size of the blade.
Wow, we got a knifey spoony here.
Sometimes it's just about how sharp it is.
Wow.
How well you wield it, Tim.
Wielding things over here. Dang. All right, so speaking of sheds, the record set of whitetail sheds were found in an old farmhouse by an outfitter in the 1990s. The buck was known as the General, and the sheds were picked up in 1958 and in the mid 220s.
Jeez.
What state were they found in? Is it A, Nebraska, A, Nebraska, B, Alaska, C, Illinois, or D, Iowa?
Carson seems to know. He's cut you off right at A.
I should have just let him go.
It's A, right?
Okay.
I was going to say Nebraska. I don't know why. I had no reason. You seem to know why. So
I think Illinois. I figured I've heard that being from Nebraska. It'd be terrible if it is A.
Well, it's Nebraska.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I read an article on that not too long ago.
Yeah. Sometimes
hold on.
I can't read.
someday. Yeah, sometimes referred to as the Nebraska General.
Nice.
So I think alone, just sheer score, the matching set went in the 190s and it's without a spread. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Giant.
And
Giant.
The rancher whose house they came from, I think he said they were like that year, 1958, there were 3 bucks roaming around. They were all about the same size as that deer.
Wow.
And that's back in 1958, where deer were kind of unicorns and
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Probably not.
unreal.
I mean, wasn't there a period of history there once they kind of got killed out, where there wasn't a ton of hunting probably going on because there weren't a ton of deer? I mean, would that be kind of square in that time frame?
I mean, there were years. I don't remember when the first when they reinstituted deer hunting in Illinois, but it was like during my dad's lifetime.
Yeah. 60s.
I think so. Yeah. So there was a few years there where there was no whitetail hunting, but
Can you imagine? We'd be out of jobs, fellas.
Crazy. to think
it'd
about.
be awfully quiet
Shoot a lot of
around
turkeys
here.
in the spring.
Right.
We're called DeerCast.
Squirrel
Speak cast.
Nebraska. Okay.
All right.
Well, no thanks to our audience. We have no shout outs this
Come on,
week.
guys and gals. We need
Jeez.
some shout outs. We need you to do us a huge favor. Like, subscribe, leave us a review for
Give
the
us a
podcast. Follow us over in the Rack Pack.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff helps.
Yeah, please.
We should probably start the show with that when most of the people are still listening.
yeah. Hey, do us a solid.
All right. So this week we got some new Rack Pack members, the private Facebook group for the listeners of the podcast. And every week I butcher some names. Every week there's a fake one in here that we got to sniff out.
Heck yeah.
All right. We have Trevor Berwick,
Yeah, right.
Heather Paris Hawk. Oh, she could be a serial killer.
Paris Hawk.
Is that a fake name? No. Okay. Alistair Get Panic. Alistair Get Panic. Alistair Get Panic. I can't think of how that's fake.
That's okay.
It feels
Maybe
fake.
It's not fake.
He's related by proxy.
Shayna?
Shayna, Forrest's wife. That's Forrest's father-in-law, James. All right. Derek Qatar Kennedy. Why do they got to include the middle name? Is that a middle name? Qatar?
We should ask him.
It's an interesting name. I don't know. I got to go back to Alistair Get Panic that's probably fake somehow and I can't figure it out.
Could be the Paris Hawk.
Paris Hawk.
Yeah.
Heather
Sounds like a raptor.
Yeah.
But the whole name
Paris
usually
Hawk.
is fake, not just like two parts of the.
Yeah,
It's true. Yeah.
Well, what is it, Tim?
Yeah. Alice Target Panic.
Yes, I read it many times.
Alice Target.
Art.
Well, there's got to be some
So it could have been Heather Paris Hawk.
some cushion around it. Maybe it also is.
Sorry, Heather.
Yeah, one of the like 3 women that are in the group.
She's like, I'm done.
Blasted.
That'll teach you.
Oh, she probably doesn't listen to the podcast.
Well, guys, it's on to sheds and turkeys.
Amen.
Coyotes and trapping, and for people that do that,
Absolutely.
I'm not one, but I know of people.
I've heard of it.
Great
Understand the
people.
concepts.
It'd be huge.
I don't know. People do it.
It'd be great.
All right. All right. Well, stay tuned for episode number 365. Because, I mean, you want to.
It's next.
It is next. They seem to go in some type of order. All right, boys.
Well,
Thanks
we
for
appreciate
making
you
the trip
coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on here.
Hopefully have another banner year like you did last year.
Hope so.
Start putting in the work now.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's
All
true.
right. Until next time. Peace out.
See ya.
DeerCast is now supercharged with maps. Get ahead of your game with killer new features like live Doppler radar, wind check out to 5 days, virtual rain gauges, GPS path tracking, and more. Plus, get our 14-day revolutionary DeerCast prediction and access to DeerCast Track. Prep, predict, and pursue with DeerCast.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by DeerCast. Prep, predict, and pursue your target buck.